Hi, and welcome to the next episode of How to Beat Nick. Today we're going to be talking about health insurance, specifically private health insurance. Most of Nick's cases around health insurance operate under the assumption that rising medical costs are bad for people. So, allow people to sue people for malpractice, yada, 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 yada. The vast majority of healthcare debates, not just cases Nick writes, but almost all healthcare cases, assume that screwing over the patient is bad because, well, they get screwed. And there are principled and pragmatic harms associated with that. The truth is, in the United States, screwing over patients is probably good because the alternative is screwing over everyone really badly. And this has to do with the way private insurance works. There are four considerations to the question of private insurance and why private insurance is bad. The first is the way private insurance operates is risk pooling, right? So we take care of the elderly amongst us, the people who aren't old enough to get Medicare, but still old enough that they have a lot of health issues, by making young people pay more for insurance. And things like the Obamacare mandate ensure that young people either pay for insurance or they pay the fines associated with being uninsured. The second issue with private health insurance is something called prior authorization. So more and more private health insurance companies are demanding that every procedure be authorized by their own in-house doctors. And shockingly, more and more, those in-house doctors don't authorize procedures. For example, there are horror stories of doctors asking for wheelchairs for their patients and being told, no, patients need 6 months of physical therapy before a wheelchair can be approved. This isn't a motorized wheelchair, it's just a wheelchair. 3, and this is like the big structural warrant, private insurance companies are some of the most powerful corporations in America and some of the most important lobbying interests in America. Blue Cross Blue Shield spends more on lobbying than anyone except the defense industry, which makes sense given the size of their market, how heavily regulated they are, and how much they want to be able to price discriminate. The fourth and final relevant consideration in insurance is the increasing monopolization, the vertical monopolization of healthcare. So Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, now owns 3 things. They own the insurance company, which is the financial services company. They own Aetna, which is the pharmaceutical distributor. And they have begun to purchase hospital networks. So they own the people distributing care, they own the drugs that are the vast majority of care, and they own the insurance company that sets prices across the entire market. This vertical monopolization is single-handedly responsible for the destruction of the American healthcare system. Also, it makes these companies wildly profitable. Now, consider a case like medical malpractice, which is basically just, hey, patients should have more rights. If we give patients more rights, they will win more lawsuits, they will get more money. This has 4 impacts. 1, healthcare costs for people go up across the board because these insurance monopolies now go, okay, well, now my costs have gone up. In order to appease my shareholders, I need to increase prices. And the way they do this impacts 3 people in 3 distinct ways. 1, the average American just pays more out of pocket for health insurance. That's probably bad. 2, the number of prior authorizations required goes up, meaning that it is actually harder to get healthcare with the existing insurance coverage you have, leading to worse healthcare. And 3, and most damningly, what happens when insurance companies raise prices is hospitals raise prices for uninsured people. Because basically the way insurance companies work is they negotiate discounts relative to uninsured rates. So Blue Cross Blue Shield says, you will charge us 50% of what you charge uninsured patients. Hospitals go, great, we'll charge uninsured patients thousands of dollars. And when they have to raise prices, what they do is they just raise enormous prices on uninsured patients, and then they offer insurers a heavier and heavier and heavier discount, which makes sense from the monopolist perspective because you want to punish people who aren't on your insurance and you want to reward people who are on your insurance. It's price discrimination within the monopoly. This has, I think, a couple of impacts. The first on Nick's cases about healthcare as a whole. You can kind of just concede PMC, point out that very often these cases either operate retroactively, it's about suing doctors, or they operate in like the less than life-threatening parts of the healthcare industry, and you can just point out that rising healthcare costs actually kill people. The second really kind of unique warrant is just like the way this monopolist's incentives operate. The more exposure the monopolist has to regulation or to legal liability, the more incentive they have to hire lobbyists to change further laws to guarantee them more power. So it increases their marginal incentive to engage in marginally more lobbying, which is probably the controlling link into their ability to be abusive across the board. Third and finally, and I think this is just like the critical argument about insurance, you have to understand that insurance company trade-offs are not just limited to, we're going to raise prices. There are like a bunch of distinct mechanisms, right? One, these insurance companies make deals with some of the largest corporations in America. Forcing their employees to take their insurance is like the biggest form of captive market creation there is. Because most people, to be clear, get health insurance through their work, and you don't actually get to choose your provider. You can only work with the health insurance company that your employer works with. Two, there's a trade-off in regulatory support at the point at which, again, you're buying out the regulator. Three, there's a trade-off in R&D, because health insurance R&D is only economically viable at the point at which you believe an insurance company is going to insure your product, right? Otherwise, it's going to be widely unaffordable to the vast majority of Americans. So most drugs only see R&D support if insurance companies and pharmaceutical benefits managers are willing to like signal that they would fund this drug if it got developed. Fourthly, and I think most damningly, there's like just a chilling effect argument. Uninsured people are way less likely to go to a hospital because they fear that the bill will cripple them, and so they don't seek preventative care, which in turn makes their health care on the whole more expensive in the long run, because preventative care is actually the cheapest way to solve for all of these issues. The preventative care argument operates in a number of other cases too, in like really fun and unique ways. For example, the reason drug insurers should be allowed to advertise on television, despite the fact it's like wildly misleading advertising, is because creating medical anxiety causes people to get their like monthly or like biannual checkup, which is preventative care, which is the most cost-effective form of healthcare. So the preventative care argument is pretty operable in almost all healthcare debates as well, especially if you increase public focus toward like their people's own healthcare outcomes. Hopefully that's helpful. Certainly a lot of content to parse through there, but this is a very complicated debate topic that definitely deserves more consideration than it's currently given on APTA.